everybody, welcome to our very first episode of Get Rich Podcast this 2025.
Hi Pael, long time no see.
Long time no see. I hope you enjoyed your...
Could have been better.
Could have been better. So, kayo guys, how was your holidays? How was your 2024? Comment down below. Because today we're going to be talking about our outlook for 2025. What's happening, key trends, sectors, investment strategies for 2025. And then basically, how do we get rich this year? Because are you excited for 2025?
What's the best way to describe it? I'm looking forward actually to 2025 because while we have gone through so much uncertainty last year, I think we're going to go through even more uncertainty this year. So with that being said, I think in any uncertain period, there's always opportunity.
Yes,
it's just a matter of being patient for
and
it.
Perspective. So before we, take a look at those opportunities and everything, I think one of the best ways to really grow in life is to look what happened, right? And learn from mistakes, experiences. So maybe we can evaluate first what happened 2024. Because it was our, we launched the podcast last year. We talked about different things, real estate, career, investing. So if you haven't watched, guys, New Year's resolution nyo is tapusin nyo yung backlog ng Get Rich Podcast. Pwede rin yun. So maybe we can start from there. The things that we talked about, are we correct? Are we wrong?
Oh, great.
So,
Sige.
Yeah. Maybe we can start with the portfolio structure. Diba? One of the things that we...
What about economy first?
Yes,
let's say projections.
Sige.
Okay. One of the biggest predictions or one of the start of 2024 was that we were expecting emerging market, including the Philippines, to do well. Right? And the reason why it's because all of us have suffered from high inflation the last 2.5 years, where everything just got so expensive. And so we were hoping, well, not really hoping, our outlook was that, second half of the year, things would start slowing down globally, which it did happen. And hopefully interest rates would actually start coming down all over the world. For a bit, especially in the US, that started to happen. Even in the Philippines, we've cut interest rates the last 2 months also. So that's actually the good part about what's happening from a global economic standpoint. The problem is, there's more questions, especially with Donald Trump coming into elections, winning that elections by a huge landslide. It's because now markets are now predicting more uncertainty, more tariffs, more inflation, and that's the reason why bond yields or interest rates now have risen in the last 2.5 months.
Yes.
Right. So before we get into 2025, that type of volatility, from our standpoint. So what is interest rates and borrowing costs going to become cheaper now?
Yeah.
Right. So everybody's watching out for that, and that's the reason why you're seeing some scares happen throughout some sectors in the country. And one of them, for example, is the property sector, where
we talked about that last year.
We've been bombarded in the last 2 months by oversupply of condominiums from 20 months. And then next month, nag-report si Lichu, 29 months. And then next month, naglumabas siya sa TV, 34 months na. And then you have, on the other hand, you have people like Colliers making announcements that it's going to be a 5-year worth of oversupply.
Yeah.
And then the POGO left, several vacancies, especially coming from Pasay, where now you're seeing homes that bought it for an investment. Now they cannot even lease it.
And so they're still creating that new island.
Yeah. So this is the story of our lives last 2024, where we thought it was going to be better. And then the news and it got better to some extent. And then heading into the last part of the year, parang may problema ulit. So that's the story of our life for 2024.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about last year, 2024, is diba, encouraging them to invest and start their investing journey. And one of the things that we saw, which was a good, at least, option back then, was actually dividend paying stock. So how did that perform from last year?
Okay, and that's the bright spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Why did we recommend that or talked about dividend paying stocks?
Because in our opinion, coming into a high interest rate environment and high inflation, right? There's so much uncertainty coming from the equities, which we thought was going to be better and did not happen. But our priority has always been companies or investment assets that were able to pay you a certain yield.
Right, because they're paying you to wait, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And we kept on repeating that statement, get paid to wait. Because this is the only environment where you have that option.
Right.
You can go through from Pag-ibig, MP2.
MP2.
You could get it from bond yields, because treasuries or Philippine corporates were paying maybe net 5.5, gross 6.5 to 7% for some of these corporates and treasury. At the same time, if you're buying stocks, stick to the ones with high dividend yield, which is the REITs.
Yes.
And some of your telcos, for example, like Globe and PLDT, which did pay off, and for power, sorry.
Yes.
Right? So actually, all those things that we talked about for getting paid to wait has really outperformed 2024. To be fair, despite everything that we may have missed on the economic side.
So just to maybe like recap our thought process back then. Kasi, di ba, we were expecting that interest rates were gonna go down, and then the market was trying to look for opportunities to still get that yield. That's why they rotated to at least the good option back then was the dividend paying stocks. Tama ba?
In summary, yes.
Yes. So that's how we,
TLDR.
see TLDR of things. So later we're gonna be talking about 2025. So going back, since diba, we talked about personal finance and last year, going back to the real estate thing and interest rates. So in a business perspective, it can be bad, but in a personal perspective, na maybe 2025 will it be the year that I should buy a personal real estate, not for investment, but for personal na maybe ito yung pwede kong future tirahan or future condo that I can use when I go to work in this place. What do you think about that?
Huminga ako ng malalim eh. And I'll probably repeat what I said last time. If you're buying it for a home, the answer is always yes. In fact, I think it's actually what David Dichu was talking about. I think to some extent, he actually emphasized it. That if you're buying for a home, this is actually a very good time. No questions asked. I think from an entrepreneur standpoint and from an SME standpoint, business was shit. Business was difficult last year. And I'm pretty much expecting a similar territory for 2025. Hopefully things might change in the second half, but so far in the first half, it looks like
it's going to be the same.
Very similar.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really reflect that the economy is in the same boat. The reason why I share this is because there's just varying amounts of data regarding this. There's no actually exact source. So we have some sources say that we have 1 million people, Filipinos, working as virtual assistants, and could be as high as 1.8 million. And to give people perspective, we have 51 million people in the workforce.
Yes.
So you're probably looking at 2 to 4%, depending on the range, right? Of how many people are in that virtual assistant.
Yeah.
And those individuals, actually, for some individuals, they probably say they had a great year last year because they got paid significant amount. That you're also seeing downsizing happen in some US tech, and especially from multinationals, that they just outsource these jobs to individuals, like side hustles for many individuals.
So what's happening in the United States, they're facing unemployment, but realistically, those positions, napupunta lang sa mga VAs.
And you could actually also say that even in the US, unemployment wasn't so bad as well.
Right.
Because of the side hustle, right? A lot of things on the freelancing. It's a very similar situation. So instead of working from a full-time corporate, you could be juggling, 2 gigs at the same time. And I feel that's also very common in the Philippines. And that's the reason why consumer, to some extent, was still relatively okay. It's slowed down in some pockets, in fact, in terms of volume. But you could notice that for the ones that are still doing well, that's the reason why the malls are still full.
That's
right?
so true.
Just go to the malls, the malls are still full.
After Christmas.
Right? And then if you look at the 90%, which is struggling, you could also see them start to rotate. What do I mean is that if you're buying, like a chicken joy is so expensive that it's 160, 180 pesos if I'm not mistaken. Solo 2-piece chicken. So it's expensive for some. They start now rotating into cheaper meals. They try to look for some alternatives, right? So the purchasing power might have gone down, but in terms of total consumption, it's still
Healthy.
That's the thing.
A lot of opportunities happened in 2024 despite it being a hard market. So 2025, maybe let's take a look what's happening for 2025.
Well, like what I said, the first half, we're trying not to see anything too different. So come President Trump's inauguration this January, what are you looking at? Still tariffs coming from 20+% tariffs coming from Canada and Mexico. There has been some positive notes coming from China and Donald Trump where they've had that discussions. In fact, last week, if I'm not mistaken, they came off a phone call and they were talking about, we had great discussions, right? I don't know what that means, right? But to some extent, it could have been that the markets were already pricing it in.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody knows it's going to be a difficult period for China. Why? Because, let's be honest, a lot of things are happening positively in China's economy.
Yeah.
Sorry, nothing. Actually,
Not the
economy is slowing down,
down,
but from
yeah.
a technology standpoint, a lot of things are very positive, which is causing uncertainty also from the U.S. Right? So, case in points like EV, electric vehicles. The BYD Han, which is their flagship car for electric vehicles, was released in 2022. Electric vehicles, the concept came from the United States.
Yes.
3 years later, China is dominating the entire battery space. You've had Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi start to announce that they're going to be merging together because they're on the verge of...
Yeah.
Sorry, not Toyota. Honda, Nissan, and Mitsubishi merging together because they're on the verge of being...
Can't keep up
they
with
can't
the-
keep
yeah,
up
yeah.
anymore, right? So you're seeing all these trends happening. And even from the semiconductor and from the chip space, right? Even look at the new Huawei phones. Everything now is produced in China,
Right.
right? So instead of having chips, and that's the reason why there's going to be a huge chip war. Actually, it already started last year and probably will still continue in the next 4 or 5 years because there's going to be a lack of chips. And so everybody's trying to fight for that supply chain. At the end of the day, if China can become self-sufficient, which is where they're also heading, nobody's going to be producing chips cheaper than China, let's be honest.
Crazy. So is it like invest in chips, invest in China?
Well, that's the thing, right? Very tricky situation. I actually have a little bit more positive note because interest rates is... So I'd like to say the economy is really divided today. On the one hand, you have the West,
Yeah.
which is the US taxing tariffs whatsoever, which is causing inflation and causing goods that are landed in the US to become more expensive.
So tariffs are basically taxes from
Taxes,
the imports.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? So what's happening is because it's going to be more expensive for the US consumer, it often leads to higher inflation.
Yes.
And then there are other parts of the world where you have China and actually some parts of Southeast Asia where deflation is happening. In fact, China already announced, they made their forecast. Inflation is going to be close to zero, negative
Yeah.
the next 2 years,
Yeah.
right? So what does that mean? Because they're slowing down, impact from the dollar, economy is slowing down, things are becoming more expensive for some countries. And that's the reason why the cost of goods now, because kulang yung demand, slowing down, economy is slowing down, right? So cheaper cost of goods. So that's what I mean. Who's right, who's wrong, right? And that's the thing. Like I've been always in that camp where how can you have inflation when China is slowing down? That still remains my stance. That's the reason why I'm hopeful that second half
Would be better.
sana tumama na ako. Sana tumama na. This has been my stance last year and I was wrong. Hopefully tumama na ako this year. But regardless, it's going to be the yield performing assets that will probably still outperform first.
For this
Which is still
year.
my same stance that
Yeah.
what we said about last year. I think it's going to be dividend paying stocks, search for yield, get paid to wait. I think it's going to be the same theme also for
Right.
first half of 2025.
So if you want to check this out, you can type in like US 10-year, right? You would see the US 10-year, that is the interest rates basically that we follow, and it's going up, right, for the past few months. So you would see like the maybe first half of 2024, I think it paused and then went down, right? And it's continued to go back up right now. And when you check the Chinese 10-year, right, it's going down. Kaya we see that deflation is happening in China. That's why Edmund doesn't believe na inflation will happen, or at least won't pursue.
How about we do a quick economic lesson 101
Yes,
and
yeah.
make a shortcut, okay? US is taxing. US is putting tariffs on the rest of the world, especially in China, US, Canada, and in Mexico. Higher tariffs lead to
Higher prices.
and higher inflation because the consumer is going to be taxed. And what happens is because inflation is high, interest rates need to be high also
Yes.
to slow down the economy so that it doesn't spiral out of control. And normally that leads into lower economic growth, which leads into a slowdown generally in the US economy, which is impacting
The whole world.
the whole world. That's a shortcut.
Yes.
Right? And on the other hand, you have China slowing down because of their property crisis. Property is down 40%. Growth is slowing down. So what did they do to prop up the entire Chinese economy. They put interest rates and they injected liquidity to
Yes.
as low as they can. If you look at the Chinese treasury or interest rates in China, it's at 1.6%. This compares to over four and a half,
Yeah.
four and a half in the U.S. So there are 300 basis points, 3% more expensive to borrow in the U.S. and in China. This has never happened, just to let you know. So they're trying to bring down interest rates so that they can prop up the economy, give people more money so that the economy can start improving once again.
This is what we call QE.
This is what we call indirectly quantitative easing.
Yeah. So there you have it, diba? At least short economics 101 on what's happening. So now that we know yan yung trend this 2025, or that's what's happening in the market that's our market outlook for 2025, at least for now. What do you think it's the best way to, capitalize on these markets? You mentioned still dividend paying.
Yeah.
So is it because, we're seeing a pause, and then after the pause, will it be a cut?
I'm in that camp.
Yeah. For the US 10-year, we're talking about the...
For all,
For, yeah.
actually. I'm in that camp. I'm really, really hopeful that inflation starts coming down because it's really expensive. Go to the US, it's really expensive. Eat out in the Philippines, it's very expensive. So hopefully things start to slow down, give majority of the people some breathing room, and keep interest rates down so that even the US pays less interest on most of the borrowings that they incur. In fact, the last $1 trillion debt in the US, if I'm not mistaken, is 37 trillion or maybe even higher.
Yeah.
And they have to pay off that somehow, some way in the future. And for all their expansion, for all their fiscal stimulus, you need cheaper interest rates. So that's what we're hoping for the second half of 2025.
They say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So do you think, since Trump is the winner and is the president right now of the United States, do you think yung 2016 to 2020, his first term, something similar would happen this 2025 to 2029? Tama ba? Yeah. Basta yung this term niya, second term niya.
Okay, my question is...
Kasi you would see 2016, the dollar also went up and then went down. So
exactly.
Do you think that's something similar to what we're going to see?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened, right? So regardless of what's happening, and if you look at the Biden administration, was there really something different? It was more like a continuity anyway,
Yeah.
right? They were more like, okay, we're still going after China, right? At the end of the day, China is going to be the biggest threat, right? So they keep on making noise, for example, that China is going to attack Taiwan. They're putting military people now in the Philippines, whatsoever, blah, blah, blah. But you look at China, China has everything to lose.
Yes.
Right? Because they're a rising economic power, especially in terms of technology, right? Which is what everybody's fighting for today. And that's the reason why would they commit a mistake when everything now can be done on their end, right? US is in a different boat because everything is expensive in US. Labor, like what we talked about, is expensive, right? $18, $20 per hour. Well, I can get some VA in the Philippines, get a call center to talk to these AI chatbots, right? Indirectly, you're paying what? 1,000 pesos per day. That's what? $20 for 10 hours worth of service. Yeah. That's totally different, right? So you can tell that US, they're not really in that panic mode, but in terms of technology, in terms of hardware, they're losing the battle. Maybe in terms of software, they'll probably still remain dominant, which I agree. At the end of the day, with regards to software is all about trust.
Yes.
Right? And unfortunately, you'd probably trust the US more than China. Let's be honest, diba?
Yeah.
Would you really try searching on a China search engine, or would you be using Google? Diba? Would you open a Chinese social media account or open a Facebook and Instagram? Unfortunately, TikTok is
banned.
No, unbanned.
Unbanned now because Trump is
unbanned. But the thing is, in terms of software, still US is leading and very dominant in that regard, both from a North America, Europe, and several countries in Asia. So still today, you still use a Microsoft. You still use Apple.
Exactly.
Right. You still use open software from Android. Right. So I still think from a software perspective, US is still going to remain dominant.
So even if, diba, even if those are the things that's happening around the world, there's still so much opportunities that we can capitalize on. So for example, okay, I'm in the Philippines right now. Let's say I started opening my CWL account last year and then started investing. I started, let's say I started with REITs. Then this year you said, still dividend paying is the game since, interest rates paused and we were looking for a cut, and then the opportunity is still there. And you would see that some REITs are actually, they're thinking to be listed in the index, right? To be part of the index.
Oh, you mean part of the index?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so that's also one of the things that you can look out for. So Philippines been cheap for so many years already, and then consumers still doing great. So do you think it's time now to, even if hindi siya dividend paying position, paying company, do you think it's already a good time to accumulate these names?
If you're investing for the long term,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Is it cheap?
It's
for
cheap.
so long.
But cheap can remain cheap
Yeah.
for really long periods of time. Yes, it's cheap, but I'm still not convinced yet. I'm still not convinced. I understand.
You're waiting for that confirmation.
And I understand that, this is the best time to be accumulating, right? Because everything has gone down. So for case in point, Wilcon is pre-pandemic low, sitting at $9. I've never seen Wilcon trade at these levels, right? It could also be a reflection of consumer because it's home refurbishment or office or whatsoever. Even URC, I've never seen it. I think it's pre-pandemic low. Are we there yet? Yes, they're cheap, but I'm just not convinced. I feel like the interest rate or the interest paying assets are still very attractive today. So for me, but if you're full there, let's say like 80% of your assets is in REITs, dividend paying stocks, bond yields, 80%. That's pretty high, yeah. 80% of your assets is there. Then you want to spec it in the 10, 20%, go ahead. Fair, right? But if in terms of asset allocation, I'd probably suggest that majority of your assets still needs to be on interest paying assets than rather into cheap companies or consumer and paying it for growth, because I don't see growth yet change too much this year. Maybe in 2026, but not this year.
Very interesting. Daming so much things to look forward.
What about, do you have a different thought?
I think very similar
Consumer?
with what's happening with the market. I'm also looking at that. I think my thesis is the same with yours, that it's pausing, but if we see that, China is slowing down, inflation is, we're overthinking inflation too much, and then when they start cutting rates, I think it's also a good time to rotate it to emerging markets, which Philippines part of. So I think it's a good time to look at maybe for me technical wise, since I'm a technician. So take a look at mga issues na quieting down, and then maybe it's a good time to accumulate. With the risk to reward, it's a good company, and then technical wise, it's good. The risk to reward is there. So it's a good time to also.
But I'll be really honest. I was really, and I thought I was correct, because we were in that interest rate cycle, I think August or September last year, where interest rates started coming down in the US, right? And
they did.
And then Trump comes in, and then the inflation narrative changes.
Yeah.
I'm still in that camp where I think inflation is still coming down. Now, I could be wrong again. But I really, when I look at it, it's very difficult because the world is intertwined today.
Yeah.
It's very different from when it was in the 1970s, 1980s, where they talk about sticky inflation. Today, I can get things shipped from China.
Parang may arbitrage, may
Exactly,
price
right? And we don't have
arbitrage,
this. We don't have this speed of logistics or whatsoever happened before than it is today. And that's the reason why you have some individuals, let's say like property. Why am I gonna be buying doors from Home Store when I can have, let's say, 100 doors shipped from China all the way here? And China is not growing; it's slowing down. Anything that you need, from toilet fixtures, anything related to your house, you can just get it straight from China today.
China, if you want to sign,
right? And that's the reason why, if you look at self-sufficient in terms of agri countries, especially in Southeast Asia. Actually, we just came from Malaysia. I was surprised. Food is cheap. Food is cheap compared to the Philippines. Let me finish. All right, even Indonesia, and people go to Bali and whatsoever. Like, I was very surprised. Like, food is very expensive in the Philippines. Traveling in the Philippines is very expensive. Like, just getting a hotel, like a 5-star hotel here and a 5-star hotel in Kuala Lumpur, like, I don't know, here is probably what, 30-40% more expensive.
I was watching this top of mind. I was watching this podcast. Boss sent to us, and investment banker here in the Philippines, and he said one of the two sectors that we should really put investment and grow that industry
Power,
is
for sure.
actually tourism and manufacturing. Yung sabi niya.
There's no way manufacturing is going to be here. And let's just be honest, right? How are you going to focus on manufacturing when power is so expensive, right?
Yeah.
Power is subsidized in Malaysia. That's the reason why oil is cheap. Just to give you a case in point, airport was 50 kilometers away from anywhere.
In
Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
So to get to your hotel, it's 50 kilometers. To get to the city center, right? It's like 50 kilometers, like here to...
Maybe Batangas?
No, that's too far naman. I think like here
Or-
to, I'm trying to think, like maybe
Pampa.
Santa Rosa, give or point.
Laguna?
50,
Okay. Yeah,
Laguna,
yeah,
50
Laguna.
kilometers,
Okay.
right? No way you're going to head anywhere in less than an hour
If you're here
in a
the
normal
Philippines.
day. Let's just be honest, right? There, it's like normal. But okay, that's why everything is so efficient. Infrastructure is so efficient. That's the reason why property prices don't go up too much. Like here, you pay for a prime property in Makati or in BGC. Doon, I can live like 20 minutes away, 20 kilometers away, and still come on like 20, 30 minutes, right? So it's very different from that side. So people pay premiums to live in Makati and BGC just because it's so traffic here. If you really think about it, there's just so much land also
In the Philippines.
in the Philippines, the outskirts of Manila, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So,
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying
yeah, that's a reality.
that's the reality,
Even
right?
in the Philippines.
Yeah. So that's the reason why when you talk about inflation, things being expensive, I'm very skeptic.
Yeah.
I'm very skeptic. I think it might not go down because even in home prices, because I feel like the big corporates are just flush with cash. Sorry, wrong word. I know they're flush with cash, right? Just look at their balance sheets. Most of these guys are all very healthy.
So what does that mean for the day-to-day
Okay,
person?
so to the day-to-day person, people are always talking about, are we in a home bubble? That's always the term, bubble.
Yes.
It's always a dangerous word, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because bubbles often come from debt and leverage. And so when there's if companies are over-levered or just hindi nila mabayad yung utang
Yeah.
nila, then we have a problem. So for the small developers and the SMEs, they're going through a little bit difficulty today because a lot of these guys are levered and paying
Yeah.
expensive interests. But for the big corporates, they don't have that problem.
Yeah, because they pay it.
One, because they have so much cash to begin with.
They don't need.
They don't need it
Yeah,
as
yeah,
much
yeah.
as the others, right? And in terms of a percentage of the total balance sheet or assets that they have, it's actually they don't have too much debt as compared to where they were before. So if you don't have debt in the system or in the big corporates, especially for homes, why would I be in a rush to sell condominiums and bring down prices? The answer is no, right? Plus, if I bring down condo prices, the people who bought last year,
Magagalit sa'yo.
magagalit sa'yo. Kasi, di ba, binigyan mo ng dapat ako rin eh.
Yeah, yeah.
Di ba? So most likely what they do is give you flexible terms. Right? So instead of buying it within 4 years, sige sir, bigay ka na ng 7-year, 8-year flexible term. Mag-move in ka na. Pay me over the next 7 years. Which has happened. Right? And so for some individuals, so I tell people, if you're buying for a home, great. Diba? Because this is the time where you're going to get the best payment terms. And you can probably demand additional or better terms.
Yeah.
Because some developers are like, sige na. Basta,
Kunin mo na yan.
kunin mo na yan, basta
Oo.
mabenta lang eh, diba? So I think that's a positive end for some individuals.
See, I think that's a beautiful thing right now. Na yes, there's so many problems, but at the same time, there's so many opportunities that you can take advantage of. Yeah, I'm excited with my next question. So, okay, since we're the Get Rich podcast, so if in the start of the year, if you were, if Edmund were to start back from zero, maybe go back to your mid-20s then, but you still have all the knowledge that you have now, how would you restart given that you know all these trends? You have that knowledge. So how would you get rich in 2025?
Okay. So I'll probably do this in 2 angles. First is trying to build a career for yourself or starting
Okay.
out. I don't have the best answer for this. Maybe you do. I'll ask your opinion on this
Okay.
after. You have to sell something. That's what I always believe. You have to be selling something no matter what it is. It could be yourself, could be your expertise, could be any item that you saw, and then doing influencer marketing on TikTok and social media, but you have to sell something. That for me is how you should look at when you're graduating. If you're working with an employer, ask them, how can I get that variable income?
Yeah.
Right? Sir, I want that variable income, right? I want a sales job, right? And for me, that's probably the best angle today because, and that's the reason why you're seeing so many people, like some of my students, just to give you guys an example, are working side gigs. So that's why the virtual assistant is doing so well because indirectly you're trying to sell something and working for that person, right? And that's the reason why some individuals, some students that I have, take like 2 brands using like social media marketing and try to promote them, and then they get paid twice, right? Which is great. That's how I should look at it, right? So you're actually selling yourself, and that's the reason why for me, from the active standpoint, that should be how you're looking at it. If I was going to be starting today, find a product that you love or that you like, and find a way to be able to sell it.
What niche would you still?
Oh, I don't know. You should ask her. I'm the worst person to ask about these things.
So would you still pursue maybe finance, like still in this?
Okay, so finance for me is no, because for me finance can be learned anywhere you are, right? And that goes to my second point. Where do I put my money? Let's say I have money coming from the active income. 2, how we look at things in global trends is always from a top-down approach. So we talked about interest-bearing assets. Those are probably my first option. Another option, if you want to go more speculative, is try to look at all the big megatrends. We call it megatrends. So what are megatrends? Megatrends are long-lasting types of trends that impact productivity of people. And usually it revolves around technology, innovation, and demographics, right? So for me, if I had to look at megatrends today, an example of a megatrend is the internet or the smartphone and how it changed our lives for the next 20 years. How I'm seeing it maybe in the next 5 to 10, something that's not there yet is on autonomous vehicles. I don't know if it's going to be here, but autonomous vehicles is actually gaining a lot of traction globally, and it's actually high margin for having that operated. At the same time, I think the chips would probably be the biggest beneficiaries, and that's the reason why I like the chip sector the most. That's on the mega trend end. So this is on top of the interest-bearing debt. This is on part things that you want to speculate on.
So you would be selling mga EV para in the future you're gonna sell mga autonomous vehicles.
Walang pera dun eh. Maliit eh. Maliit ang bonus to sell cars eh. I mean, how much do you get paid for selling a car? 5,000 pesos. Sorry, yeah. I mean, parang kulang eh. Kulang eh. Diba? There has to be like a bigger upside for you if you're going to be selling anything.
Yeah. I would, maybe if I were to go back, like a fresh graduate me, I would build a skill, number one. So, same thing, like what's the mega trend right now that you could focus on? So, ako, maybe if I were to go back, that would really also interest me would be AI. So, something with tech. So, I think the good thing about living in the Philippines is you see opportunities in the West, like in the US, and then you can copy those opportunities here in the Philippines, like opportunity arbitrage. So, I would do that and then build a skill, because I think one of the mistakes and one of the time wasters that I did since I went into trading, so I thought I was building a skill, tapos parang subconsciously, parang nagagamble na pala ako minsan, or some of the times. So build that skill, and I think the good example, yung sinabi mo yung social media marketing nga, na he's doing social media marketing for one company and then does it for his side hustle. So because it's a skill that you can replicate, it's scalable, especially with tech. Right now, with AI right now, like you can be an employee, but you can employ AI agents to work for you to easily scale your work and help you be more productive. So I think that's the thing. And then of course, start making money work for you. We talked about it, like learn about the basic things about interest rates. You can feed these knowledge with your AI and then help you create an investment plan out of it. So do that. Kasi ngayon, before, diba, like 10 years ago, we always tell this. Now, when you start investing, you would need what? How much? Like 20,000 plus. Right now, you could start 1,000 pesos, 500 pesos to start your X-Call CSG, right? So, and then different opportunities. And then now that you know this, extend that investment portfolio to global funds, right? Or to global stocks. And then, of course, also fix your personal, like how do you protect yourself? Like, have the right insurance product. If you want to work for a company, like build that career, make sure that you have that benefits to help you, like yung healthcare mo. Because I mean, like it's so crazy. Like when you go to the hospital and then hospital ka, magkano kagad yung babayaran mo, di ba? So I always say this to my talk that I read this blog that sobrang nag-struck sa akin kasi sabi niya that the Filipino people are, or a majority of Filipino families are one hospitalization bill away from poverty. So make sure that when you're starting out is you get things sorted first. Okay, build that emergency fund, build that protection, build that skill. Then while you're building your 9 to 5, you have 5 to 9 to build your second income that would, fund your risk taking projects or whatever. And then from there, I think with tech, with AI right now, you could do so much, you could be productive. It's a matter of how you allocate your energy throughout the day. Kasi it's so easy to be overwhelmed with the things that we talked about. So it's a matter of being more self-aware. And I think the next 5 to 10 years is... I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I'll just add one last thing before we end. And I agree totally with what Pael was talking about. When you're finding your skill, you have to understand one thing. The brand that or whatever you're doing is yourself. So whatever you're selling, you're always selling yourself. So whatever skill that you're good at, you always have to think about how can I sell that in the future. So when you have that type of purpose and you have that type of mindset, at least you know 5-10 years down the road where you want to be. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah. Yung parang that intention of, even if it's, of course, it's hard to say that when you're starting out, especially if you're a fresh graduate, you think na yun na pala yung gusto mo after college, and then you're stuck na parang, oh, hindi pa pala. Even if, let's say, you're maybe 2-3 years into your career na you would realize that baka this is not for me. I think it's always not a late time to start again, or at least explore.
Yeah.
Just need to make sure na you're really intentional of who you want to be 5-10 years from now. Kasi everything that we do can change, right? But what can't change is your values, your work ethic, your habits.
And don't be afraid. A 10 peso water bottle in a convenience store is a 100 peso bottle in a restaurant. Always understand that there's different perspectives, and always understand that value is always treated differently. So there's always going to be opportunity.
That's a quote. I think that's a powerful way to sum it all up, what we talked about. So comment down below, guys. How was your 2024, and maybe one thing that you're really looking forward this 2025? And if you want any topic that you want us to cover, then share your thoughts down below. So anything else?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
So
thank you guys.
Don't forget to subscribe and follow our socials. So TikTok, we're also on Spotify. So please do listen while you're driving in traffic or whatever, commuting. And then follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all of the things. So thank you guys, and see you in our next episode.
Bye.